Okay, today is Sunday, 17th of May 2026, 10 a.m. Air temperature 25 degrees centigrade, about 77 degrees Fahrenheit. There's been a lot of rain recently, so it's been relatively cool. In fact, it's drizzling a bit now, so I don't know how much longer I can stay out here doing this video. The MEDAKA have been breeding for about 6 weeks now, and some of the strains are producing fewer eggs as the temperature rises above 25 degrees centigrade. But other strains prefer warmer weather and longer day length of breeding, and they're now at the stage of peak egg production. Which brings me to the topic of this video, which is number 9 in the basic series, where I talk about the breeding process. So starting with spawning. Now, to select parent fish to breed from, there's a choice between breeding for genetic quality or breeding for genetic diversity, which means if you're breeding for genetic quality, that is, you want to produce offspring with the very best qualities of the strain you're breeding from, then select from the strain the best female and best 2 females to form a breeding trio. This will bring out the best qualities of whatever strain it is you're trying to produce. On the other hand, if you want to breed for genetic diversity, which is to maintain the long-term health and long-term robustness and fertility of a strain, then you want to select from the strain maybe 3 males and 6 females, perhaps a few more, to form a breeding group. This gives a diversity across the strain, increases the robustness of the strain. Now, I nearly always use a breeding group of maybe 9 to 12 fish. My MEDAKA strains never had a good pedigree, so there's probably not much point in trying to breed from a trio to continue a strain with the very best qualities. And I think for keeping MEDAKA outdoors, it's probably more important to aim to maintain the robustness and health of the strain in order to survive the outdoor conditions. So I use breeding groups to maintain genetic diversity. Now I use typical type of breeding mops made from a scouring pad, except instead of using a pool noodle, I just use a bit of closed cell foam to provide a float secured by a zip tie. So they're easy to make, DIY, no problem. Now, some types you can buy or whatever, they cut the scouring pad in this way, so that when you roll it up, it sort of looks like this. Now, to me, that doesn't look very natural. You're trying to imitate, plant stems in the natural environment. You're trying to imitate those for the females to lay their eggs on. To me, that doesn't look very natural. And a lot of eggs you lay on there are going to be very tempting for the parents to eat because they're easy to get at. So I cut the scouring pad the other way, trying to imitate a whole lot of plant stems. And then if I roll it up like that, the eggs are less easy to get at if the parents decide they want to eat them. And in this way, I find some females like to lay their eggs at the top. near the water surface. Some like to lay their eggs right down at the bottom, maybe 100 millimeters below the water surface. And again, a lot of females like to appear to hide within all these imitation plant stems, if you like. They quite often go inside just to lay their eggs away from perhaps predators. Anyway, that's the way I do it, and it seems to work okay for me. Now, I usually collect the eggs from the mops about every 1 or 2 days. Most of my tubs have got snails in them, and I think the snails eat the eggs. They don't eat all of them. And also the snails lay their own eggs on the breeding mops, which gets a bit annoying. So I don't want to leave the mops in there too long without collecting the eggs. And spawning mop here, if you can see them, it's earliest in the morning. Usually the females won't deposit their eggs till after midday. So there's only 2 or 3 eggs on here, I think. If you can see them. Now, the eggs are stuck onto plant stems, or in this case on the spawning mop, by the females, and there's a very thin, sticky filament which attaches the egg onto the spawning mop. And one problem with eggs is that they can get a white, fuzzy mold on them, which means it kills the embryo inside. And partly, I think, sometimes this fuzzy mold appears because this sticky filament, starts to decay. So ideally, if you have the time, and I don't always have the time, when I pick the eggs off here, I put them on this thing here, which is a piece of a sock stretched on a bit of ceramic tile, just stretched out like that, dark coloured sock. And the idea is to pick off the eggs from here. Not sure I can do it. See if I can find one. Pick off the eggs from here. Put them all on. Put them all on this bit of sock. You can see the thing stuck to my thumbnail. And when it's on there, then can just roll the egg around, which then wipes off the sticky filament. That will help the egg survive. Now, ideally, I might put 20 or 30 eggs on there and roll them all around. Sometimes I don't. And then I hatch the eggs out by either putting them in a cut-down yogurt pot like this, which is a 1 litre pot, and I just cut it down to something similar like that. Or I have a cut-down water bottle. Now the idea is, with these, they have a notch on the top rim, like here, or a notch like that, so that when I put them in water, this one will just float. Similar to this one, put it in water, it will just about float. That means the eggs are inside. When the fry hatch out, they can stay in there until they get strong enough. They can then swim out through the notch into the main tub. Now, I wouldn't put them in here with the adult MEDAKA, because they'd eat the small fry straight away. I'm just showing you, these are sort of floating containers. They just maintain their own buoyancy. This one has enough buoyancy on its own, type of plastic. This one I have to put on a bit of closed foam cell. Got to staple it on with an ordinary paper stapler, and that's how I do it. Now, fertilized eggs are tough and rubbery, so you can roll them around on your finger, no problem. You won't squash them. If they do squash, it means they're unfertilized, and they won't produce an embryo. And you want to discard those, because those unfertilized eggs will attract this white mold, and which will then spread to the fertilized eggs. So, as I say, I use these containers for hatching the eggs out. There are lots of different methods for hatching eggs. You can use small containers and transferring the fry to larger containers when they hatch. You know, indoors, outdoors. You can use heaters to maintain high temperatures. You use methylene blue, sterilize the water, etc., etc., etc. But the method that I settle on is to use these sort of floating containers to hatch the eggs directly in a larger tub, where the fry can grow out to a reasonable size without having to be moved to a grown-up tub at an early stage. So mostly I use these IKEA Trofast tubs, which have a capacity of about 20 litres of water, although I also have some larger black tubs which are on the bottom shelf, and I use these for hatching out the eggs and for the fry until they grow out to a bit larger size. Now the netting I got there, I put over the top, is to prevent mosquitoes laying eggs in there, and to prevent dragonflies laying eggs in the water. Mosquitoes are okay. Once the fry gets to about 3 weeks old, something like that, they'll eat mosquito eggs. That's not a problem. But dragonfly larvae, which hatch out from the dragonfly eggs, will easily eat all the fry in a few days. So here's one of the Trofast tubs. Got a couple of these egg containers just floating at the surface. As I say, when the eggs hatch out, they would, when the fry are strong enough, they can just swim out into the main tank through the notches in the rim of these containers. Maybe they're selling containers a few days till they regain this, till they get this strength, and they can start swimming in the big tub. Now, I usually have a small sponge filter or small internal filter in the tub, which helps with aeration. And usually I move this from an established tub somewhere else, so the filter media will have microorganisms in it which will sort of circulate within the water, be a food source for the fry. Also, I just use plain tap water, but maybe fill the tub up a couple of weeks before I put the eggs in there to hatch out. And within that couple of weeks, biofilm will grow on the internal surfaces of the tub, and that is another food source for the young fry. However, I find that fry within 1 or 2 days of hatching will immediately start eating powdered fry food, and that's all I really rely on for feeding fry until they get larger. I don't have the patience to bother with brine shrimp or other live food. Now I've got aeration in there with from this filter. Sometimes suggested that fry won't survive very well because it creates a current, and they're swimming against the current in the water, and it tires them out and they die. But I find that the fry will shelter within these floating hatching containers. Presumably, if they don't feel strong enough to swim against the current, then they stay in there until they are strong enough. It doesn't appear to be a problem. The other issue is that many people recommend that fry should hatch in green water, which provides a food source. I don't believe that green water is beneficial in any way. I think that's a myth. and I did a video on this about a year ago maybe, which I call the green water myth. So for me, plain water is fine. Another point is that some people say if you hatch out fry in a large container like this, a large tub like this, then they're quite weak when they first hatch out, and they find it difficult to find food, which might be powdered food, which might be floating on the surface, and then they starve to death. I don't find that's a problem. They find their way around a tub like this quite quickly. And my view is that if a fry is too weak or maybe too stupid to instinctively search for food, as soon as it hatches, then it won't be tough enough to grow and thrive in keeping out outdoor conditions, which are much more difficult to survive than if you're keeping in an aquarium indoors. Now, as the fry develop, it'll be found that one or two will grow much faster than the others, and it's better to move these larger fry to another tub before they start bullying the small fry and trying to eat all the food. It's maybe time I move some of these to another tub in the next few days. Now, another point is that I carried out a simple experiment about a year ago to see what size of fry would be safe to be placed with adults. You can see my previous video called Size of Fry to be Safe with Adults somewhere in my list of videos. And I found it's okay to move fry to an adult tub when they're about 1 centimetre long, which is about 3/8 of an inch. Now in here, you can see I've put in a scale where it shows 1 centimetre floating on the surface. And I've also got some bits of plastic to 1 centimetre long. And you can then judge whether fry are big enough to actually move them. Some of them are starting to get, you can see from this bit of plastic here, some of them are starting to get about 1 centimetre. So maybe in a week, they'd be safe. I could move them. Most of them, obviously, though, are far below 1 centimetre. Now you can see in these tubs there are very many fry. I hadn't realised I'd put so many eggs in the tubs to hatch out, and I'm really surprised I've had so many hatching successfully. I'll soon have to start scooping some of them out to put in other tubs, because they won't all grow out properly in this size of tub. They just get overcrowded. Now, I'm not quite sure where I'll put them yet. Now, I use this method of hatching and raising fry because I get lots of eggs from my robust strains, and the fry are tough enough to survive outdoors in this way. If I had more delicate strains, or where the females only producing a small number of really precious eggs, then it would probably be necessary to use other methods which would better ensure that every egg and every fry hatched out and was raised successfully. So, long video, it's enough of that. Now I'm going to do one more video just to conclude the basic series. If anybody's got any comments on items, topics I might have missed or haven't covered properly so far, I'd be happy if they commented in the comment section below, and I'll try and include whatever I may have missed in the final part of this series that I'll do in a week or so. Okay.